There are few things more pathetic than a man destitute by his own hand. Sean O'Shaughnessy was one such man, lost to drinking and games. He spends every shilling earned on booze or on a card game, completely wasting it. He begs for change when he's out of work, down near the pub. The owner will take pity on him occasionally, but he mostly reminds him that he needs to pay his tab. Sean had nothing, and was nothing. But one day, this would change for him. See, horses were always in demand, and thieves were always looking for footmen. Sean was an easy target for Kayla, a Weasley man with no family and no money. If the guardsmen caught him, or he got shot, nobody would miss him. A perfect man for the job.
Oi, down on your luck, are ya?
Kayla said to Sean, knowing full well his living situation.
Aye. Spent all my coin on booze and carrots. But for the life of me, I can't stop,
replied Sean, gaunt and tired.
What do you say I buy you a pint? We might have a job for you.
Kayla had Sean by the balls. The broke man, desperate to make any kind of money.
So you wanted me to nick horses from some rich geezer and bring them to you by the lock? Seems easy enough. What's the catch?
Sean said, slightly cautious, but nonetheless interested.
Aye, you're smarter than you look. See, the barn is guarded by this big ovenous dog. The pup's about the size of one of them horses too. Chances are, you'll have to kill him. I know, but the pay here is more than you've made in the last 3 years. Plus, I'll pay off your tab.
Kayla knew how to swindle almost anyone, and Sean was a cakewalk.
Alright. I don't like this, but what choice do I have? I'll try to avoid killing him, if I can. But I'll get those horses, no matter what.
Sean was determined to make money, and finally turn his life around. The day for the heist soon arrived, and Sean was prepared. He had a chunk of meat, as well as a small bow and a few arrows, just in case. It was a cloudless night, and a full moon hung in the sky. Sean could clearly see the barn guard in the moonlight, as well as his hound. Kayla was not lying. Both creatures were massive, by all means of the word. Sean could only hope the dog was not so well trained that it could ignore fresh meat. Tossing the chunk towards the hound, its head perked up from the sound. Sniffing slightly, its head snapped towards the food and sauntered towards it, though it soon ran out of rope. The tugging and whining of the dog soon awoke its master, who suspected his pup had smelled a rabbit. To entice the guard, Sean shook a nearby shrub, causing the dog to growl and the guard to rise from his chair. Taking up a torch, he went to investigate. Sean knew he couldn't take them both on, even with the surprise advantage. Steeling himself, Sean let 2 arrows fly, both hitting their marks. Sean stepped over the corpses of the duo, his heart heavy, but not deterred from his task. After all, it was too late now. Sean felt a weakly hand grip his ankle, and a voice wavered from the ground.
I hope you're satisfied with yourself, Sean. I knew you were desperate, but I never thought you'd do this.
Soon, The man took his last breath and finally died. Sean vomited on the ground, now seeing the man's face clearly. The man who lay dead in the field was one of the regulars at the bar and at the card table. It was Aidan Callahan, a Master 25s player. He would sometimes slip Sean a couple coins to wet his tongue after a losing streak. This almost broke Sean with guilt, but his desperate condition compelled him forwards. The barn held 4 horses, all of them magnificent to behold. Each one was easily worth a small fortune, causing the guilt and shame of his deeds to leave Sean for a moment. Slipping leads onto the heads of the surprisingly amicable beasts, he led them out to the paddock and towards the lake where Kayla was waiting. It wasn't long before he reached the shore. The last words of Aidan playing over and over again in Sean's head. He pushed them away with the thoughts of fortune, a cold pint, and a warm bed. When he arrived at the spot, Kayla was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps Sean was just early or at the wrong spot. Checking frantically around for the mark Kayla left, an X with a diamond in the center, he found it in the trunk of a nearby tree. Resolved that he was just early, Sean waited.
Strange,
he thought to himself.
Kayla was adamant that he wanted to move these horses under the cover of night. Whatever.
Sean tied the horses to the tree, making sure the knots were tied, and rested his eyes. He then awoke to the frantic whinny of the horses. A wild dog was in front of him, growling and drooling. Sean shot an arrow towards it, and the dog ran off. Wiping the sleep from his eyes, Sean looked around and noticed the sun was starting to peek over the horizon. But Kayla was nowhere to be seen. Sean had no idea how he'd offload these animals, but soon had an idea. He'd take them back to the old man, saying he found some thief sleeping by the lake and had chased him off. Sean calmed the horses and set to untie them, when he noticed one of the most stunning horses he had ever seen. It was sleek black, elegant, and medium-sized. Such a horse would be the prize of any rich man's collection. He had already murdered a man and stole 4 other horses. What was one more? Perhaps it was a stallion Sean had missed when he stole the others. As he began leading the other horses over to the black stray, the once easily led and friendly horses started rearing up and began to neigh loudly. Sean took them back to the spot where he was previously, and the horses eventually calmed down.
What the hell's got into them?
Sean said to himself.
Must be a critter, or something they didn't like. Sure is fine.
Sean made his way over to the stray, a bit of rope ready for a makeshift lead. The horse didn't resist this, and even huffed in a light, friendly manner. Sean patted its neck, but after a few taps, Sean found his hand would no longer move. It was stuck to the horse. Fear spreading across his face, this soon turned to absolute terror as the horse's face began to fall away, showing sharp teeth and dead eyes. Its once flowing mane began to fall out, and water weeds began to get tangled in what was left. A closer look revealed that the hooves of the creature were backwards. The horse began to walk, dragging Sean with it towards the lake. His dug-in heels did nothing to stop the slow advance of the supernatural creature. Sean frantically looked around for any sort of way to free himself as he felt the icy water of the lake cover his legs. Soon, it was over his head, and Sean learned where Kayla was. Well, parts of him, at least. Kayla was covered in bite marks, chunks of his flesh ripped from his body. Passing by the mutilated torso, the creature gave Sean what can only be described as a hungry glance. Sean knew what he had to do. He took out his knife and began to cut at his hand. Soon, Sean got himself free and swam frantically to the surface. Before his head broke the surface, a hellish neigh reached Sean's ears. The Kelpie would only have one victim this day. Crawling onto the beach, Sean bandaged his hand and collapsed, having survived his harrowing experience. Well, that's the story it tells, when people ask about the hand anyways. Very few folks give his story any credence, thinking him to be a drunk man with an overactive imagination, having lost his hand in some embarrassing accident. Though the occasional few that look into it report a faint whinny from the water's edge, and the occasional horse tracks in the mud.
Please leave your message